So we're going to continue with explaining the book, the explanation of the Matn Abī Shujaa, which is a beginner's book in the Shafi'i school of Islamic law. It's a very famous book. It is studied worldwide at any formal education, Islamic formal education institute, whether it's a college or whether it's just a place where people come to learn Arabic and they come to learn the basics of the religion. This is one of the first books that the people that they learn. So we're talking about slaughtering. We're in the chapter of slaughtering, and this chapter tells us about the integrals of the slaughtering. It tells us about the conditions for the validity of the slaughtering. It tells us about the recommended matters of slaughtering, and it's going to talk about what kind of animals that we can slaughter so that any of the slaughter would be valid. So we mentioned that in order for the slaughter to be valid, that the person has to cut, the Muslim, the Jew, or the Christian has to cut the esophagus and the trachea of the edible animal with something sharp, regardless of the material that it's made out of, except nail and bone. So we were mentioning this, and we were saying that this is what needs to be cut in the Shafi'i school in order for that animal to be judged as halal. And we also said that it's a condition for the validity of the slaughtering is that it is done intentionally, meaning that the person, they are cutting with the intention of slaughtering, or that the cut is happening with the intent of cutting this animal so that it can be slaughtered, so that it can be halal to eat. And so the author mentioned that what would be invalid is if, let's say, someone had a knife in their hand and it fell out of their hand and it cut the esophagus and the trachea of an edible animal, like a sheep, for example, that the scholars said this would not be halal. Even if the knife, it cut the parts that are an integral of the slaughter, they said in this case it's not valid. They said in this case it's not valid because there was no intention, and because the cutting occurred without an intention. No. So this tells us that whatever is slaughtered by machine, that the slaughtering occurs without the action of a Muslim, Christian, or a Jew, that these animals that are cut by the effect of electricity going over and over be valid, because there would be no intention, it would be missing the intention. Now, but if the machine, let's say, it cuts, let's say, the button needs to be pressed each time in order for the cutting to occur. In this case, then it's fine, because if the Muslim is the one pressing the button and with the intention to cut the trachea and the esophagus of those edible animals, and so the blade, let's say, comes down with the push of that button, then if he pushes the button each time, it works. And that would work. But for someone to turn a machine on, or a conveyor belt, and then for the blade or for the animals to come onto the blade and be cut, if that occurs, then the first initial one that is cut is halal and the rest are not. because they are done without intention. Maybe because there is no intention. Yeah, even if it gets cut properly. Because the point is for it to be done with an intention. Yeah, the scholars of the Islamic law, they give different examples of when an animal is killed without an intention, yani slaughtered the Islamic way, but without intentionally, without the action being intentional to slaughter that animal. They gave examples of that. We mentioned the knife falling out of his hand and landing on the neck of a sheep and slaughtering it. They said that this meat is not halal. And then we have the example of the one who he was doing target practice with a bow and arrow, and he shot the arrow at the target, let's say like a bullseye, and a gazelle jumped in front of the bullseye right when the arrow was about to hit and killed the gazelle. Yani normally, if you shoot an arrow at a gazelle and the arrow kills the gazelle, yani this is halal, because the way that you slaughter an animal that is not under your control is by killing it, and however you can, with something sharp. So if you shoot an arrow at it, if you shoot a spear at it, you throw like a knife at it, and it stabs it in the head or stabs it in the heart, and it gets killed, and it's something that kills with its sharpness, then in that case, what do we say? That this animal is slaughtered, even if you didn't cut its neck. So that's the slaughter of the animal that you cannot get your hands on, the animal that you cannot control. As for the animal that you can't control, then the way to slaughter it is by cutting the trachea and the esophagus. So they give the example of someone doing target practice, and they shoot the arrow at the bullseye, and then a gazelle jumps in front of it. Or they were shooting arrows, let's say, at targets, and a bird flew in front of it and got killed. Since he didn't intend to shoot the bird, and for the slaughter, that bird that got killed by that arrow without the intention is mayta, yani not halal to eat. Likewise, they give the example, if the animal comes towards a knife, like let's say somebody, they planted their spear into the ground, and the blade was facing up, and an animal came and it got its trachea and its esophagus cut. They said that this is not halal, this would not be halal. So that's exactly like the machine, because there's no intention behind it. And who's the one that planted the blade or the spear? That Muslim. Did he, when the animal came onto the blade, did the animal get killed by the action or with the intention of being killed? Then, since the answer is no, then the meat is not halal. So that applies to the machine slaughter. We're going to continue on. That was just a quick review. We're going to continue on with page 505, where we were reading, we mentioned about the conditions of the tool. So Abī Shujaa mentioned the conditions of the tool used for slaughtering. He said, it is permissible to slaughter with anything that injures except a tooth, a nail, a claw, or the like. So it is permissible to slaughter with something that has a sharp edge, whether it is made out of iron, lead, bamboo, rock, or the like, with the exception of the tooth, claw, nail, or the like, whether they are from a human or another animal. And also it is not permissible to slaughter with a bone, even if it has a sharp edge. The slaughtering would not be valid. So if the person kills the prey or the domestic animal with something that does not have a sharp edge, like a bullet, for example, then it is not permissible to eat that animal. So this is where, if you're hunting with bullets or with slugs, then this would not make it halal according to Ash-Shafi'i. In regards to the person who is slaughtering, Abī Shujaa stated that it is permissible to eat what a Muslim, a Christian, or a Jew slaughters. So if someone other than those three does the slaughtering in the way that Islamically would be valid had it been slaughtered by one of those three, that meat would be mayta. It would not be permissible to eat. This means that if either a male or a female among Muslims, Christians, or Jews slaughters, it is permissible to eat what they slaughter. However, if a Christian or a Jew slaughters and mentions other than the name of Allah while slaughtering, then it is not permissible to eat that meat. So if a Christian says in the name of Jesus and he slaughters, then we say that that meat is mayta. If the Christian says, or if the Jew says in the name of Uzair or something like that, we say the meat is not halal. Yani because they said a name other than the name of Allah. Yani they mentioned the name of a creation. However, it says, as for the Majusi, the fire worshipper, it is not permissible to eat from what they slaughter. Likewise, the Wathani is the pagan, yani the one who worships idols, i.e. the one who worships the trees, the rocks, and other idols. It is not permissible to eat what he or she slaughters. Yani whatever they slaughter is mayta, not permissible to eat, not edible. If a person doubts about the slaughtered animal, whether it is lawful or unlawful to eat, it is not permissible to eat it. For example, if a Muslim and a Majusi both order their dogs to attack a prey, and both dogs attack the prey, but one does not know which dog killed the prey, that is, whether it was the Muslim's dog or the Majusi's dog, in this case it is not permissible to eat that animal. So we see that even the scholars of Islamic law, they spoke about these cases regarding the meat that there's doubt about it. They mentioned these cases, they mentioned these scenarios. What are the scenarios? Among the scenarios that they mentioned is if you have a Muslim and a fire worshipper and they're hunting, and the Muslims, the Muslim, he sends his dog to kill the gazelle, for example, and the fire worshipper also sends his dog to kill the gazelle, but neither of them, or the Muslim, for example, let's say, is not sure, did my dog kill the gazelle, or did the dog of the Majusi, the fire worshipper, kill the gazelle? So in this case, he's doubting, was it my dog or his dog? If it was his dog, then he knows it's haram to eat it. If it was the fire worshipper's dog, he knows it's haram to eat it. If it was his own dog, he knows that he can eat it. But he's not sure which. Could it be his, or could it be the fire worshipper's? So in this case, it's haram to eat that meat. Another example is if one shot at a prey and then found this prey in a river, but he did not know if it was killed by the arrow before it fell in the river, or whether it fell in the river wounded and then drowned in the water. So one does not know the reason of the death of that prey. Therefore, one cannot eat that animal. And if according to Christianity, if according to Christianity the Amish are considered Christians, then we could eat what they slaughter. There's a whole it is a whole division or split that happened at one point in time. And at first it was all the Roman, and so that included what they call Eastern Orthodox. So in the beginning, what people know today as the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and what people know today as the Eastern Orthodox Church, before they split, those two were one. And then they split off from each other. And then the others, any divisions of Christianity, they split off from the Catholic. What they call the the Protestants and all these people, they split off from them. So among those splits is the Amish. So if they are still, and according to Christianity, are judged as Christians, then their slaughter would be valid. Yeah, they split from, they come from that split. So originally it was what they call the Roman Catholic Church, and then the Eastern Orthodox Church split away from them. And then from the Roman Catholic Church, you had the Protestants and all those divisions of the Christianity. They came from that split. Yeah, it would be. So the question was, if a Christian or a Jew, they had a hunting dog and they sent their hunting dog to kill the prey, and with the conditions, of course, that the hunting dog has, and he's been trained, and what he hunts or kills is considered to be slaughtered, then yes. Could be your connection. I have full Wi-Fi bars, but Allahu A'lam. Okay, I will. And he messaged me, inshallah. The other example that was given is if a person is hunting with a bow and arrow and they shoot a bird and they're not sure if the bird died before it landed in the water. Let's say it was flying over a lake and you shot the bird. And so sometimes you clip the wing, sometimes when you shoot like a bird with an arrow, sometimes you get it like right in the heart and it just like rips those organs out of the bird and khalas, it's dead and it's falling through the air dead. But sometimes you just like graze it or wound it and the bird's not actually dead before it hits the water. So if he was not sure, was the bird dead or not before it hit the water, and so he's not sure if the bird died because of his arrow or because of the drowning, in this case it's haram to eat it. He's not allowed to eat it. So, okay. The scholars of Islam deduce from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that any meat that one doubts whether it was slaughtered properly or not, it is not permissible to eat it. This judgment has a consensus. This judgment has a consensus among the scholars, as Suyuti and others narrated the consensus on it. So what does this tell us? And this tells us that when someone, they are not sure, did this meat get slaughtered or not, that means it's haram for them to eat it. So we're even talking about, let's say, you go to a place, it has the halal sign on the outside. Does that by itself make you sure? No, it does not. You have to find out then what is he like. Does he know what that even is? Because number one, there's many people nowadays that are ignorant; they don't know. Number two, there's many people nowadays that they do know, but they cheat. How many people out there have been corrupted by money or their lust for money, and so they would cheat people so that they can make money? Because why? It's cheaper to get meat, grade D meat, or meat that is like, not slaughtered from the supermarket, and sell it to the people as if it were halal and have a wider profit margin. Many people, they would think that way because they are attached to the worldly life, because they like luxurious living, etc., etc. And this is why our Shaykh, rahimahullah, he advised us to leave out luxurious living completely, or to minimize it, because look what happened during COVID. How many people all of a sudden their lives changed completely. They went from living a luxurious lifestyle to becoming poor. So then at that point, since they've been so used to living luxuriously, what will they do when they have to, let's say, instead of eating steak every day for dinner, they're eating what? Now they're just eating bread and hummus, for example. To go from that to that. So what's he going to do? Is he going to go cheat people and take money from others unjustly so he can continue to eat steak every night? Those are the negative consequences of living luxuriously, because it makes your heart attached to those luxuries. So if someone says it's halal, simply just make sure and ask them until your heart is certain, until you have certainty. Don't think with your stomach. Don't say, "Oh, I'm so hungry. Yeah, he said it's halal. I'm gonna believe him." Ask the person, was it hand slaughtered or machine slaughtered? What was cut of the neck of the animal? You could even mention something that's not related to the validity of slaughtering, because the person is ignorant that he's going to think that that's from slaughtering. He's going to answer yes, and you're going to know that this person is making stuff up. They're going to know that this person is being dishonest. Like when those people that they claim that they are ex-Muslims, and then somebody asks them how many rak'ahs in the wudu, and then they say whatever number. They didn't realize that it was that there's no such thing as rak'ahs in wudu. Anyway, so if the person tells you that that it's hand slaughtered, you can believe them. If you believe them, then it's permissible for you to eat. If you don't believe them, if you still have, let's say, something in your heart that's telling you you're not sure, then it's haram for you to eat it. If they tell you it's machine, then you can't eat it. So that's the case for meat that people claim is halal. Now, what about the case for meat that is not even promoted as halal? For sure you cannot eat that meat. Unless you call, let's say, Tyson Chicken, and you call the slaughterhouse that distributed that chicken to your local supermarket, and you ask that particular slaughterhouse, do you hand slaughter the chickens? And if they say yes, and you ask them, what is the person that slaughters the chickens, is he Muslim? Then he would answer, or he would ask him, is the person who slaughters the chicken, other than the person you're talking to, is the person who slaughters the chicken, is he Christian or Jewish? If he says no, then you know that you can't eat that meat. But supermarkets, they're not going to be hand slaughtering. They're not going to be hand slaughtering chickens. And the way that many slaughterhouses in America, that they slaughter the beef is by poking the cow through the front of the head with a steel rod. So they impale the front of the head of the cow with a steel rod, and that's how they kill it. Na'udhu billah. That would be haram meat. So what is the matter with those people that they say you can get a hamburger from McDonald's and say Bismillah and eat it? Na'udhu billah. If that was the case, then what's the point of slaughtering in the first place? If you could just say Bismillah and then the meat in your hand supposedly becomes halal, the non-slaughtered meat in your hand supposedly becomes halal, then what's the point of slaughtering? These people, subhanAllah, they are corrupt. And this is the consequence of corruption and the consequence of the ignorant people taking positions of and as if they have knowledge or as if they are scholars. Because they give these rulings to the people, and the people, they really get harmed. And then you come and tell them, like for example, you come and if you meet a Muslim, like, at a new job or at school or whatever, and you're getting to know them, and then they're like, let's go to lunch together, and you're like, okay, do you know any halal places? And then the guy's like, no, let's just go to McDonald's and just say Bismillah and eat. And you say, A'udhu Billah. And that person's like, what are you talking about? And then you tell him that this meat is haram, it's not permissible to eat. And then that person says, what are you talking about? Sheikh so-and-so, he said that it's permissible for you to eat. Who are you to say it's not? And you don't know anything, and this and that. Na'udhu billah. And you try to explain to them calmly, using the rules of the religion, and explain to them the hadith, explain to them the rule, and they don't listen. They say instead, so-and-so said, so I'm just going to take what he said blindly. This is not the way in Islam. The way in Islam is not to follow blindly and to disregard the rules. This is a form of delusion and following the nafs. This is it's not the way that we are ordered in Islam, which is to act based on evidence and certainty. Subhanallah. طيب. And so I warn you against that. I warn you against those who they buy meat from the local supermarket, and it's not even promoted as halal, and then they say, just say Bismillah and eat. And I warn against those people that they buy food from mainstream fast food places like McDonald's, like Burger King, like Steak and Shake, like Chick-fil-A, like Taco Bell, and then they say, just say Bismillah and eat. Na'udhu billah. This is a big harm, subhanallah. And how weak and attached to food do you have to be to eat McDonald's? Like to eat McDonald's hamburgers. Subhanallah. And it's easy to get, I would say, relatively easy to get halal meat. Relatively easy. There's Muslims all over the place. Like, unless you're living in some rural town, but even in the rural town, then you can just like slaughter a whole cow. Get yourself a cow and slaughter. Pool some resources. Get like 2-3 people, and each of you, and you pay an equal amount, and then you get an equal amount of meat from the cow. And you go thirds on a cow. Or if not, if that's too much, or if it's too expensive, or you can't find it, then what do? You don't have to eat meat to survive. Eat fish. And there's other forms of protein as well. Subhanallah. But the author said, the consensus about the invalidity and the sinfulness of eating the meat, that there's doubt about it, is by consensus, as mentioned by Suyuti and others. As for the fetus in the womb of its mother, it is edible if one slaughters the mother in the proper way, and the fetus dies because of that slaughtering. This means it is permissible to eat that fetus without slaughtering it. However, if the fetus was alive when it came out, then it needs to be slaughtered if one wants to eat it. So the judgment of the fetus, if there is a gazelle that's pregnant, or if there's a sheep that's pregnant, or any edible animal that's pregnant, and the Muslim slaughters it, and because of that slaughter, because of the Muslim slaughtering the mother, then the fetus dies, then the judgment of the fetus is that it is halal to eat. Because the slaughter of the mother is the slaughter of the fetus. But if the fetus comes out with a stable life, then it must be slaughtered also for it to be considered halal. Because at that point now, the fetus didn't die by the slaughtering of its mother. It still has a stable life. In general, any body part of an animal that is cut off from the animal while alive, that body part has the same judgment as the maytah of that animal. For example, if a sheep dies without being slaughtered in the proper way, it becomes najis, filthy. Hence, if the leg of a sheep was cut off while it was alive, this separated leg is considered najis, filthy. One cannot eat this leg of the sheep. If one cuts off the tail of a goat while it is alive, then this tail is considered najis, filthy. Because the maytah of the goat is najis, filthy. So for the parts that come off an animal that's alive, we just simply have to look. What's the judgment of that animal? If it were alive, and that alive animal, that's the part of it came off, what's the judgment of its dead body? And what's the judgment of the corpse of that animal if it wasn't slaughtered? So the answer is it would be filthy, and it would be najis, filth. So let's say that there was a gazelle and it was running through the forest, and then somehow it cut off one of its feet. So that foot is filthy. Why? Because if the gazelle were to die without being slaughtered, his whole body would be filthy. So whatever separates from the alive edible animal, the judgment of that piece is the judgment of that animal being dead without being slaughtered. For example, if a sheep dies without being slaughtered in the proper way, it becomes najis, filthy. Hence, if the leg of a sheep was cut off while it was alive, this separated leg is considered najis, filthy. One cannot eat this leg of the sheep. If one cuts off the tail of a goat while it is alive, then this tail is considered najis, filthy, because the maytah of the goat is najis, filthy. If the finger of a person is cut off while the person is alive, okay, let's see who's been listening. So we mentioned the rule, so let's apply the rule. If a human being's finger was cut off, what is the judgment of that finger? Is it pure or is it najis, filthy? Remember, don't answer without knowledge and think of the rule. That's correct. Then it's pure. Why is it pure? Why is it pure? No. Okay, that's a good answer, because the judgment of, so remember the rule is what separates from an alive animal, in this case we'll say something that has a soul, the judgment of a body part or a piece that comes off something that has a soul is the judgment of that thing when it's dead, without slaughtering. So what's the judgment of the human when he's dead? It's pure. So the thing that separates from it while being alive is pure. Thank you, sweetheart. Okay, relax. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Leave her. Okay, here's another one. So if the finger of a person is cut off while the person is alive, this finger is considered tahir, pure, because the dead person is not considered najis, filthy. Another one, this is another test. If one cuts off the tail of a live fish, what is the judgment of that tail? It is pure. Why? Because the fish, if it were just to die, its dead body would be pure, because the fish it does not become najis by dying, because the maytah of the fish is not considered najis, filthy.